Hello and welcome to the Football League World Weekend Preview Show. My name is Ned Holmes and I'm joined by my colleagues Ben Wignall and Marcus Ali. How are you doing, chaps?
Very well, thank you, Ned. Looking forward to getting back to Deepdale tomorrow after 3 weeks after the Swansea win, being a few decent draws since, and looking forward to talking about some exciting EFL action over the three leagues.
Yeah, very well, thanks, Ned. I think this weekend has a lot to live up to after last weekend's championship action, but I'm sure it can. Yeah, it's good to be back talking about the weekend's fixtures.
Absolutely. As you said, we're set for a weekend packed full of EFL action with some great fixtures across all three divisions. But before we get onto that, I'm going to ask you to subscribe to the Football League World TV channel on YouTube. Give us a like and a retweet on Twitter and a like and a share on Facebook, because that really will help us grow. Also, don't forget to send in any comments you might have, questions for me, Ben or Marcus, or any topics that you want us to talk about. But first of all, we're going to go to the Championship and preview our first game at Pride Park. Derby held West Brom to a draw in midweek, and now they welcome the Potters, another sort of promotion candidate. Do you see them getting a sort of similar result this weekend, Marcus, or do you think Stoke are going to be a bit too strong for them?
I do. I think I feel like it's a matter of time before the Curtis Davis and Phil Jagielka real guard kind of collapses in some style potentially. I think Derby have offered not much going forward, really. Obviously, it's an excellent result of the Hawthorns in midweek, and credit to Rooney for getting so much out of a group of players that is, a very thin squad that he has at his disposal. But I think Stoke will have the bit between their teeth. We're pretty unlucky not to get 3 points over Barnsley in midweek. Bradley Collins in goal for the Tykes that evening had an absolute stormer. So I think Stoke should be able to get the better of them at Pride Park. There is a sort of siege mentality going on in the squad, but I just think they might have a little bit too much of them. I think Mario Vrancic in particular is due one. I know he missed a penalty in midweek, but clearly playing very well for Stoke. And I think Michael O'Neill's men should have the upper hand. And I don't think Derby will be able to keep them at bay.
And, Marcus touched on it there, Ben. Rooney's seemed to do well with what looks a real threadbare squad. Do you think he deserves a bit more credit than he's getting at the moment?
Yeah, he definitely deserves a lot of credit. He's been hamstrung by off-field issues that he can't control. He's having to throw youth team players in there when he probably doesn't want to. He probably wants a bit more experience. He had to play Dylan Williams at left wing back in midweek against West Brom, and obviously they got a clean sheet, and by all accounts he had a good game. I think he's restricted to just 5 signings in the summer, 5 new ones anyway. Curtis Davis obviously came back, and because of this situation with the EFL, he's not been able to bring any more in, and you'd imagine he wants to bolster that squad with a few more free agents, with Colin Kazim-Richards going down injured, but obviously he can't. And to get the points tally he has so far this season, when there's teams below Derby in the league who got much more better squads and better resources, I think for an inexperienced manager like Rooney, you've got to give him a lot of credit and say he's performing well above expectations so far this season.
Absolutely. And just sort of switching to Saturday's game, then obviously Preston held Stoke to a draw on Saturday. Stoke will hold to a draw by Barnsley in midweek is what I meant to say. And how important is it for them to get sort of back to winning ways after that game?
It's very important, yeah. I think they played all right against Barnsley. I caught a bit of it, but as Marcus said, they caught a keeper on the day in inspired form in Brad Collins. He saved Vrancic's penalty, and he made a few stops from close range to keep the score at bay. I think they could be a bit more clinical, but I think they've got enough about them up front to get a victory. I think Surridge is in decent form, and they've also got Abdallah Seaman now from Brighton, obviously just signed there, and he got his first cameo on in midweek against Barnsley. I think that's an exciting signing, seeing what he did in the Europa League for Slavia Prague last season. I think he might get a little bit longer on the pitch to impress tomorrow. They'll obviously want Nick Powell back as well, because he provides that, match-winning cutting edge from midfield. Whether he's fit for the game remains to be seen, but I think even without Powell, they've got enough in midfield and up front to do damage on Derby. But I think a lot would have said the same for West Brom on on Tuesday, but obviously they couldn't get the job done. So it's going to be a tough task to breach that Derby defence, but I do think that Stoke will get it done.
Brilliant. So what's your prediction then, Ben?
I'm going for a 2-1. I do think obviously Derby have not got too much going forward, but I do think they will get one at home, spurred on by the fans, but I just think Stoke will outscore them. So 2-1 Stoke.
And what about you, Marcus?
I'm going a little bit more comfortable. I think it's a big ask for another back to the wall display like it was in midweek. You could argue Stoke maybe don't have the offensive power as much as West Brom, so maybe an easier game in that regard. But I do think Stoke will be able to get the better of them, and with the added motivation that a win could get them back close and fighting to get into the top two. So I think I'm going to go for 2-0 Stoke in this one.
Brilliant. Well, next we move to QPR. QPR's lost their unbeaten record in midweek with a defeat to Bournemouth, but now they welcome Bristol City to the Kian Prince Foundation Stadium. Marcus, they were finally beaten in midweek, but do you see them getting back to winning ways against the Robins?
I don't actually. I think this might be a bit of a surprise. I think a home win, probably a favourable sort of guess in terms of this match. I think it was an excellent second half performance. Obviously, Bournemouth were very dominant in the first half. But I just think they're a bit too reliant on a certain few players with QPR. I don't think the whole team is really working, hence why they're sort of showing in flashes in games that they can put these excellent performances together. Obviously flirting in and around the playoff places, but if Bristol City had held on to those home leads, I think Blackpool at home and obviously in midweek, they conceded a late goal against Luton. If they had held on and had those extra points, I think they'd be maybe on the same points or very close to where QPR are in the table. So I think Bristol City maybe are a little bit better than I think their results have suggested so far this season. QPR, I think, have been a little reliant on Seny Dieng, keeping them in games in between the sticks. He's had some really good performances so far. So I'm going to go for a 1-1. I think Ilias Chair and Chris Willock have been in great form for Queen's Park Rangers, but I think there's time that there's going to be an off day. You know, we saw Rob Dickey at fault for a goal at Bournemouth. You know, they're not invincible anymore, and I think Bristol City might take some motivation from that, and I think they can get something from the Kian Prince Stadium.
And QPR, I mean, Marcus feels as if QPR might struggle a bit. They were sort of boosted by the introductions of Albert Adomah and Andre Gray in midweek. Do you think it's time for Warburton to give one or two of that pair a go from the start?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd like Gray to go up front with Dykes and see what that partnership can do. I mean, I don't think Chris Willock's done too much wrong. Obviously, he's a natural winger, but with the system Warburton plays, the wingers sort of have to play up front or in the attacking midfield role. And I think Ilias Chair's probably got that number 10 position locked down. So the likes of Willock and Adomah have to, play up front unless Warburton's going to be fluid with his systems. And I think Gray coming in, he's got a lot of championship experience and scoring at this level. He's already got one against Reading last week.
Yeah.
I would like to see him in from the start with Dykes. I think Charlie Austin missed out in midweek as well, so he's kind of advanced up the pecking order very quickly. And I think he's a player with Warburton's backing. Obviously, he managed him at Brentford. I think he can get the best out of him once again, even though he's the wrong side of 30 now, but he's still got that scoring touch as he showed last week.
So staying with you, Ben, then City did draw with Preston last weekend, and they drew again with sort of Luton in midweek. Another late goal conceded for them, but in that second half they had chance after chance against the Hatters. Is it a case of making sure they take the chances that are surely likely to come against an Ars defence that has been pretty open this season?
Yeah, I think it's a case of taking the chances. It's just whether or not that happens. I think you'll know probably a lot better than me, Ned, being a Bristol City fan, but I think from what I've seen of them this season, they've been a little bit toothless in attack. I think they had 5 shots on target in the last 2 games and only scored 1, and that was from a centre-back in Nathan Baker against Luton. So I think Vyman showed some very good early season form. Whether he can sustain that, it remains to be seen. But I do think he needs to start being a bit more clinical. I think Naki Wells needs to get on the pitch a bit more, get in them areas, because we know he can do the business at championship level. But I do think they lack depth up front and out wide, and in those creative areas, I think probably should have been addressed a little bit better in the summer. I don't know whether to do with the resources at the club maybe just easing off a little bit after some decent spending over the years. But I think they could have definitely added a little bit more going forward. And I think it's showing the last few games that probably they're lacking in those areas.
Sure. Marcus is predicting a 1-1 draw. What about you, Ben?
I think QPR should probably get back to winning ways here. I'm going to go for a 2-0 home win with Gray to perhaps start and get on the score sheet for QPR.
Brilliant. We move to Deep Down next. 2 draws on the bounce for both Preston and West Brom. Are we set to see a third here, Marcus, do you think?
I don't. I don't think Preston will quite have enough to deny West Brom. I think even though obviously they had those frustrating home draws against Millwall and against Derby, of course, in midweek, I don't think it was through lack of creating chances. Obviously, they missed a penalty against Millwall, and they did carve Derby open at times, but just couldn't find the final ball in that matchup. So I think third time lucky, I think West Brom will probably be able to get the win here. I think Preston have been showing some good signs, particularly defensively. Obviously conceded 2 against Sheffield United, but I think overall they haven't been too leaky at the back in terms of the concerns that we had, particularly after the opening day defeat to Hull City. So yeah, sorry to disappoint you, Ben, but I think I'm going for a 1-0 win for the Baggies. I think they've just got too much quality to keep on not winning games at this level.
Absolutely. So a 1-0 win for you, and obviously that's 2 draws on the bounce since the international break. You're not worried about what that says for Albion. You think it's just a matter of time for them?
Yeah, of course. I think the players they've got, even if they can rotate their front line and they don't lose too much quality, we've seen Jordan Hugill has hardly really played a part for West Brom so far, and he's a quality player at the level. Ben will know much more about Jordan Hugill than me, I'm sure. So yeah, I'm not too concerned. I think the performances behind the 2 draws I don't think the level dropped too much really. So yeah, I think although they'll be disappointed, I think that'll just make them even more determined to go in and put in another good showing at Deepdale. And I think Preston maybe a little fortunate to get that draw at Bramall Lane in midweek. I don't think they'll quite have enough to hold the Baggies on Saturday.
Obviously, Valerian Ismail's got his West Brom team playing a really unique sort of direct, high-tempo style of football, Ben. But how well do you think Preston are set up to deal with that?
I think they should be able to deal with it fine. I mean, apart from perhaps Patrick Bauer, I think our defenders are very comfortable on the ball. Andrew Hughes and Jordan Story are capable of playing out from the back as well as Vandenberg and Earl being very attacking wing-backs this season. I think it's not been expected of Vandenberg coming in from Liverpool as a centre-back, but we've managed to convert him into like a very attacking wing-back, which has been a surprise. So I think getting out of those high-pressing situations that West Brom will put you in, I think we shouldn't have too many issues with that. But I also think I think they do tend to play out for the back, but then go direct once they've played it from like goal kicks and whatnot. I think we can perhaps spring a surprise. I think I watched us against Swansea a couple of weeks ago, where obviously we know what Russell Martin's style's like in terms of playing out from the back and on the floor. We pressed them very high up from the start of play, and I think we kind of exposed their limitations a little bit. I think I would have been a bit more worried about this match if it had come after the 3 league defeats we had at the start of the season. Honestly, after the Huddersfield game where we lost 1-0 and Huddersfield didn't have a shot on target, I didn't see where the next point was going to come from or the first point. But after the last few results, especially the momentum we should have from Tuesday where we got that late equaliser, which I think nothing less than we deserved. Sheffield United did control the second half a little bit, but the first 15 minutes of that, I think we had them on the back foot. We missed quite a few chances. I don't see why we can't do that to West Brom. I think Connor Townsend shuffled into that back 3. Ismail's put him there instead of Kipri, who's looked a little bit mistake prone. I think if Reece is on his form and Daniel Johnson's back to his best, I think we could cause him some damage. I don't think we will win. I'm going for a 1-1 draw. But I do think that we've got enough about us to give Ismail and West Brom a real test.
Brilliant. Well, we'll move next to the Cardiff City. Ben, it's a bit of a clash of playing styles in the Welsh capital. You know, sort of open, free-flowing Bournemouth against a much more structured Bluebirds team. But who can you see being successful on the weekend?
It's a tough one to call. I mean, Bournemouth are in really good form. Scott Parker's playing the way he likes. He seems to play on the floor, very attacking football, and he's certainly got a lot of options going forward. You know, Brooks and Solanke are two brilliant players for this level. I don't think they should have too many issues getting around Cardiff's, you know, structured, defensive kind of direct style. Obviously, Kiefer Moore's going to cause any Championship defence issues, but I think Bournemouth now adding Gary Cahill to their squad, I think he brings a lot of obviously top level experience to the equation, and I think he can kind of nullify Moore's threat. Obviously, he's got a few inches on him in height, but he's just got that kind of experience, you know, keeping quiet, giving a few nudges in the back. And Bournemouth going forward have really impressed me. You know, Anthony and Zamora, who've been probably the two surprise players of the season so far, come straight in under Parker and made an impact. And I can see that Bournemouth team not really dropping a lot of points going forward. And I can see them getting around Cardiff's kind of big threats at the back and using the kind of like pace and technical ability on the ball to get a result.
Absolutely. And things have come unstuck a bit for Cardiff City. Marcus, I think there's 3 losses in their last 4 games, and only a sort of Ruben Colwill brace really saved them against Forest. Do you think they've been found out a bit? They've been a little bit one-dimensional?
Definitely a little. I think one-dimensional is the word. Yeah, I think Ryan Giles' injury has really hurt them. Just a little bit of a live wire up front. We saw he was able to get on the ball and got quite a few assists, I think, at the start of the season. So yeah, it's going to be difficult. Bournemouth is a huge test. You know, they've lost to Coventry and Bristol City in recent weeks, and I think Bournemouth is an upgrade on even those two opponents. So I think that they're going to struggle. I think Mick McCarthy might go even more defensive, revert to type a little bit. I think the back 3 system that he's been playing will become a back 5. And they're just really going to look to try and contain Bournemouth, because the ball players that they have compared to Cardiff is so much stronger. So I think maybe a low scoring affair. Obviously, you speak about Jadon Anthony and what an impact he's made on the team. I think Mick McCarthy is going to sit his team very deep and just try and hit them on the counter attack and just absorb a lot of pressure, because I think he could probably hold his hands up and say that I don't think we're going to be able to play Bournemouth off the pitch in open play. Definitely. Of course, they're always a threat from set pieces, but I think it might be quite a negative approach from McCarthy. Just looking to hopefully get something out of this game against, of course, a really informed Cherries.
And what about your predictions then, lads? Starting with you, Marcus.
I'm going 0-0 actually. Just on the back of what I've just said, I don't think Cardiff will offer that much going forward. I think, as I mentioned, Giles and they've got a few other attacking players out at the moment. And of course, Ruben Colwill, how he carried them at the City ground. I'm not feeling great about their attacking contingent at the moment, particularly in open play, of course. So I think just from a standpoint, obviously Ben mentioned Gary Cahill and the fact that Bournemouth have looked quite defensively solid as well in recent weeks, or at least an improvement on how they started the season. So I think a low scoring one here. Yeah, I'm going to go for 0-0.
What about you, Ben?
I'm going for a pretty convincing Bournemouth win. I think they'll win 3-1, and even though Cardiff have got those tough centre backs, I think Solanke's more than equipped to outpace them perhaps, and they've got the trickery on the wings that could probably cause them real threats. So 3-1 to Bournemouth.
Excellent. Well, that brings to end our Championship previews, and we'll move down to League One. We start then at Adams Park, where Charlton take on Wycombe. It's been a difficult spell for the Addicts, Marcus, over the first few weeks of the season. What do you think it is that's sort of making life tough for them at the moment?
To be honest, I think the fixture list hasn't been kind as well. Maybe not excusing them too much, but I think having played the likes of Wigan and Sheffield Wednesday in their opening few matches did sort of get them off to a difficult start, particularly when they left a lot of transfer business until late in the window. But Cheltenham at home last Saturday was definitely a match they would have earmarked after a slow start to hopefully pick up 3 points and really begin climbing the table. And that is exactly the opposite of what happened. the performance last Saturday was probably a lot more concerning than the whole starts of the season combined. For me, to be honest, I think they had some tight losses. They lost 2-1 away at MK Dons and Oxford United in matches that maybe could have gone either way, particularly the one at Milton Keynes. So yeah, it's been a really difficult start to the season, but Nigel Adkins is being judged at the moment because he didn't really have the tools at the start of the season, but they had such good last week to the transfer window, bringing in Elliot Lee, Harry Arter, Jonathan Lecker and Sam Lavelle. So yeah, it's time to judge Nigel Adkins now, rather than on those maybe first 3 or 4 games of the season where he didn't have too much to really affect the game on the bench. So yeah, it's going to be a tough game at Wycombe. But yeah, they need to start somewhere.
And Marcus, you said Nigel Adkins has sort of got a lot more options now after that sort of flourish finish to the transfer window. What sort of changes would you like to see him make?
Well, I think one in particular is Charlton haven't started with a specialist left back in any of the league games they've had so far. Chris Gunter's had to go and play on the other side, and I think that's really made Charlie Kirk, who's played a few games on the left side of midfield, struggle a little bit. He's sort of come from a Crewe side where he had such a good relationship with Harry Pickering at left back, and then he's going to Chris Gunter, a player who, although he's had a great career, is a fading talent in League One and playing, of course, on his weaker left side. So that'll definitely be one change that I think Adkins has to make here. They signed Pap Soare, who was a free agent, but of course has a decent history playing for Crystal Palace in the Premier League. So his fitness is yet to really be proven, but I think that's one change that definitely has to happen. With Soare coming in at left back. In terms of others, I'm not too sure. I think Nigel Adkins has shown a lot of faith in Ben Watson. He clearly wants to have a leader out there on the pitch, but I think the fan base are probably calling for a change there. Harry Arter, of course, a player that came in late in the towards the deadline. It's sort of unclear on whether he'll be ready for Saturday. So I think there'll be some changes in midfield, and definitely left back is the position where the most obvious alteration will come.
Brilliant. And Ben, sort of switching our focus to the hosts then, Wycombe have won both their games at home this season. Can you see that changing on Saturday?
I'm not sure. I think it's going to be a tough game. I don't think Charlton can perform as poorly as they have done to start this season. They've got too much strength in depth, I feel, in a lot of positions to be where they are. I can see them sooner rather than later climbing up the table, but I think Wycombe have got a lot of strength in depth as well. You just look at the bench against Oxford in the 0-0 draw at the weekend. You had Akin Fenwer, Horgan, Sully Kaikai and David Wheeler all on there. That's a lot of, attacking options. Of course, McCleary, Vaux and Hanlon were all starting as well. Obviously, they didn't score, so perhaps Ainsworth could change it up this weekend. But with those options, you expect him to score quite a few goals this season, which is a big change from last season. Obviously, they struggled in the Championship for a long period of time, and they were expecting to get relegated. I think they should be promotion contenders once again, but I don't think it'll be a surprise, unlike it was 2 years ago. And I think they should be able to give Charlton a very good game here, but for some reason I can't split them. I think it's going to be a decent scoring 2-2 draw. They've both got big target men at the top of the pitch in Stockley and Vaux, and I think they could both have good days tomorrow. So
it's a 2-2 draw for Ben then. What about you, Marcus?
Well, I think it suits Charlton playing away from home. Such was the atmosphere at the Valley in the last few weeks, and the frustrations clearly being aired from the stands. I think they've got a lot of young players, so hopefully having a couple of games at Wycombe and then Gillingham in midweek to come, they'll be able to gather some momentum. I'm going for what feels like an optimistic 1-1 draw. I know Wycombe have been strong at home, wins over Accrington Stanley and Lincoln City, two teams that finished quite high up in League One last season. So I think Wycombe are rightful favourites, but I think Charlton might just be able to take a point.
Brilliant. We'll move to our next League One game. Well, Bolton host Rotherham United on Saturday. Ben, it's been a strong start to the season for Bolton. Have they surprised you? And do you think they're the real deal in terms of contenders for promotion?
Well, they've impressed me for sure. I think it might be a little bit too early to, say automatic promotion contenders. I think the defence is still a bit shaky. They conceded 3 against Wimbledon on the opening day and 2 against Ipswich. But I guess if you're outscoring teams like they did against Ipswich by scoring 5, they they should be fine. I think there seems to be a very positive mood from like fans around the club, which probably is helping on the pitch. I mean, the last 18 months have been all positives. They had to drop down to League Two, obviously, and they had a lot of turmoil and despair before that. And I think going down to League Two has perhaps galvanised them to get them on the right path. I mean, they had about 16,000 fans there against MK Dons in the first home game, and just think that good spirit around the club's transferring itself to the pitch as well, and getting back to the uni ball should really help them out against what's a strong Rotherham team. But I've definitely been impressed with Bolton this season. Some good signings as well in Afolayan and Josh Sheehan from Newport, who are both shining, as well as Owen Doyle, who's guaranteed goals at this level. I think he's got 3 in 7 so far this season.
Brilliant. And sort of shifting our focus to their opponents on Saturday, Marcus, they don't appear really quite yet with them to shaken off that relegation hangover. It's been a bit of an inconsistent start, but the striker Michael Smith, he's been in the goals. How important is it to have a positive like that in what's been a solid but not hugely impressive start to the season?
Really important. I think Michael Smith maybe not been a striker that's been known for prolific goal scoring records in recent years, but he's clearly shown, put together a really excellent start to the season. It's been crucial for Rotherham to get some footholds in games, because most of their games have been pretty close score lines. So yeah, it's really, really interesting that he sort of found his feet back in League One after relegation to the Championship, maybe a little bit earlier than his teammates. Obviously, there was a bit of interest around him towards the back end of the transfer window, but they'll be delighted to keep him. And I think Paul Warne's been playing a little bit more of an attacking style of play so far in League One that maybe we were accustomed to, particularly against better opposition last season. So I'm quite excited about this matchup from a neutral perspective. I think obviously Bolton, we could go on for ages about how brilliant they've been in front of goal, and I think the home support at the Uni Bowl, as Ben mentioned, has really spurred them on in the early part of this season. So it should be a cracking match.
And so what do you think is going to happen, Ben, on Saturday? Can you see Rotherham getting something away at Bolton? What's your score prediction?
This has been probably the toughest one to predict for me, but I just think that Bolton might edge it 2-1. Obviously, Rotherham have got a pretty solid defence for this level, but they've not really shown it in recent weeks with losing 4-2 to Fleetwood. So I just think that Bolton's attack could just be a little bit too good on the day. So I'm going for a narrow 2-1 Wanderers win.
And what about you, Marcus?
I'm the other way to Ben, actually. I do agree it's very, very evenly matched, but I think I give a slight edge to Rotherham. However, I sort of caveated that with the home support. I just think the newly restored home advantage is real, particularly at the Uni Bowl. So I'm going to go for 2-2, but I think Rotherham should be able to put in a good performance here.
Brilliant. Well, we shift now to League Two. And our focus is on Northampton versus Swindon. Marcus, I'll start with you. Northampton are third, but it's not been wholly convincing. I think they've scored 6 and conceded 4. 4 of those goals they've scored have come from set pieces. Do you think that's sustainable?
Definitely not. I don't think you can produce that little chances and goals from open play and continue to win matches. Unless you're going to post some of the best defensive numbers we've ever seen at League Two, I don't think you can say that's sustainable at all. It's been interesting to see how John Brady's got on after a decent start to management last season. Obviously, Northampton still getting relegated, but there were some positive signs in League One last season. Then a whole complete overhaul of the squad before going into this season. So there's still a bit of a transition period, I think it's fair to say. And to get the results that they have in this time, whether they were convincingly or not, is very impressive and shows that maybe they do have just the raw endeavour and that they're clearly quite well drilled defensively, which should stand them in good stead for the season.
Absolutely. And Ben, Swindon, I guess, given the uncertainty and some of the overhaul that went on off the pitch over the summer, their start to the season has to be seen as a positive, really. What have you made of them this term? And do you think the likes of, Jack Payne, Tyrese Simpson, can they break through what's been a pretty solid Cobblers backline?
Well, I think they've been pretty inconsistent to start the season, but like you said, I think with that off-field unrest, John McGreal came in as manager and then left because of the uncertainty with Lee Power's ownership. But I think Much like Bolton's good mood around the camp. I think Clem Mafouni coming in as the new chairman has kind of lifted the players. He made some really eye-catching signings. I don't think Johnny Williams or Ben Gladwin should both be playing in League Two. They've definitely got the natural talent to be playing a level or two higher. But they've probably very disappointed to lose to Port Vale at home last time and Carlisle in August. But they've also picked up some decent results, beating Mansfield at home, Salford away. And I think Payne's always been a talented player at a League One level, and him being in League Two is a real game changer for Swindon. But also Simpson in his first season as a senior player, he looks to be a real unit up top, and he's someone that with a full season under his belt, he's already got a few goals to his name. I think he's someone that can cause the likes of John Guthrie, who's in his own right a very good League Two centre back for Northampton. I think he's got a tough task ahead of him tomorrow afternoon against Simpson, because he does look like a dangerous individual in front of goal.
What's your prediction then, Ben?
I'm going to go for a 1-1. I think Northampton's defensive record's been good, and considering they've got home advantage, I can see him probably just holding Swindon out to just a goal and them getting one themselves. So I'm just going down the middle of it, a 1-1.
And Marcus, for the final time today, what's your prediction?
A little out of character from Northampton's recent performances. I think maybe they've been a little fortunate to keep as many clean sheets as they have. So I think the names written down on my notes was the ones that Ben mentioned in Gladwin and Williams. I think, definitely players that could cause any defence at this level some problems. So I'm actually going to go for a 2-1 Swindon win. I think Northampton maybe, they've been so solid away from home. I think maybe at home they'll be expected to come out and play a little bit more. And I think that might give Swindon the chances to find some more space and get the win at Sixfields.
Brilliant. Well, that wraps up our previews of this weekend's action. Make sure you keep your eyes on the Football League World teams on Twitter, because we've got 6 writers out at games this weekend. Ben, you'll be at Deepdale for Preston versus West Brom. I'll be at the Kian Prince Foundation Stadium for QPR versus Bristol City. We've got both Alfie Burns and George Harvey at the John Smith Stadium for Huddersfield versus Nottingham Forest. George Douglas will be at Craven Cottage for Fulham versus Reading. And Billy Mully will be at Kenilworth Road for Luton versus Swansea. That's all from us. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we hope you sort of continue to enjoy what looks to be a really exciting weekend of EFL action. As I said at the top of the show, please remember to subscribe to Football League World TV, give us a like and share on Facebook, and a like and retweet on Twitter. Thanks for me. Cheers, Marcus. Cheers, Ben.